All right, given that it's a couple minutes after 8, I'm sure we'll have more people trickle in. Hi, Jill, it's nice to see you. So there aren't any videos, you should see my slides. If you are new to Zoom, however, what's really cool about Zoom is that there's opportunities to engage with other attendees via chat. That's going to be the best way to connect with other attendees. If you scroll to the top of your bar, you should see a menu that drops down. And on that menu, you might see chat as an option, or if you have a more button and click on that, it should open that up. And you'll have a chat box that'll open, enable you to chat with other people, and it'll be great because you can actually drag and drop that screen and you can chat along as you're engaging in the webinar. I am totally open to you making friends through this, so feel free to connect with other people. I will not be offended if you are chatting with other people. Jill, not sure why it's blank, but hopefully you'll be able to get that checked out. It might be depending on what the settings you have. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. So thank you again, everybody, for joining. I just want to say that I really appreciate you being here tonight, that you wanted to really care for and work on your own development and growth during what's arguably a pretty challenging time. And I really appreciate you for being here with me and others in this virtual room and being a part of this community that we're creating together this evening or afternoon, wherever you're calling from. And it's a responsibility I definitely don't take lightly. And I want to make sure you all know how grateful I am to have you here, and that this is a space where we're going to have each other's back for the next 35, 45 minutes. So who am I? Hi, I'm Jordana. Some of you know me, a lot of you don't. And again, feel free to say hi to other people in the chat too. A little bit about me. By day, I'm a learning and development leader with a focus and passion for leadership development within the organization that I work for. And I coach leaders, I deliver workshops on leadership development, I develop and lead programs, and in doing that, I've helped leaders really at all levels and roles across a number of different industries, even across different countries and continents, bring out the best in themselves so that they can activate the potential in those that they lead. I kind of think of this as the Bruce Wayne version of myself. So I like to think that I have kind of a vigilante persona on the side. So I call that my Batman side, or my Batman side. That was terrible. You can try your own Batman voices. So on this side of the house, I'm also a short form improviser. I've started doing improv about 20 plus years ago when I was in college. I've performed and taught as a member of the comedy sports troupe for more than a decade. And I've served as an applied improv facilitator for various organizations. And applied improv is about bringing improv out of the theater and into other domains, whether that be businesses, education, families, etc. I'm also a MAPP alum, hence being on this webinar, and I've been an assistant instructor at Penn in both graduate and undergraduate positive psychology courses. But the thing I love the most is actually bringing these things all together, and that's what I plan to do today. So before we get started, like any good webinar, let's take a quick poll. Polls are one of my favorite things to do. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll right now. You should see that open up on your screen, and there's going to be 4 options. I'm curious to kind of get a pulse check of how familiar everybody is in this room with improv. So you should see 4 options. It's brand new to you. You've seen it, you know, maybe you've gone to a show, maybe you've watched Whose Line Is It Anyway or Wild and Out. You might have dabbled into it once or twice. Maybe you're a seasoned improviser. You've been doing it longer than I have. So looks like about almost everybody's voted. So I'm going to go ahead and end it and let's share it. So got an interesting cross section here. It looks like about 20% of people say that they're a seasoned improviser, and we really, most people look like they've actually seen improv before, but might not have dabbled into it. And that's totally fine. This is going to make sense to everybody, no matter what level you're at. So for those of you who are newer to improv or want a bit of a refresher, I wanted to just kind of give you a quick heads up of what improv is. So in the simplest sense, improv is about making things up on the spot based on suggestions from the audience. If you've been to an improv show like half of you have, or seen Whose Line Is It Anyway, you might recognize prompts like this one that performers ask to kick off a scene. What's an object that you might find in a garage? And as an improviser, I have no idea what the audience response to this question will be. It can be something obscure like a 1957 Pontiac LeSabre. I don't even know if that's a real car. Or it could be something like empty space. I have no idea what somebody's going to yell out, and I have no idea what we're going to take as a suggestion to basically craft a scene and a whole brand new world around. What's going to come out of my mouth when my feet hit the stage, what my fellow performers will create alongside and with me, not planned, no idea. So improv's interactive, it's unpredictable, and it's completely new each time. There is no script. And while only 19% of you said that you were seasoned improvisers, guess what? We're all improvisers. None of us is walking around with a script telling us what to do. So go ahead, pat yourselves on the back. You're a seasoned improviser, great job. And from the time we're young, we all intuitively know how to make things up. We invent stories, we create games, we make characters, we build entire universes and connect with each other. We are just all making it up as we go along, and we always have been. And what's interesting is, I think one of the silver linings of this pandemic is that this experience is just bringing that truth to light more. And now's the time to really lean back into that. And my aim this evening is to help you take at least one step to kind of reconnect with your improviser roots. Now, there's a million things that I can focus on. And I recognize that there's a fire hose of information coming at everybody right now. So I took a moment to kind of reflect on what do I think would be the most helpful lessons from improv at this time? What are things that I keep coming back to navigate this uncertainty? So I'm going to stick with 5 core lessons that have been impactful to me. They're lessons that anyone can remember, anyone can implement. And I'm also going to talk you through activities that you can use to practice and cement these lessons in a fun way, whether you do that on your own, whether that be with others, from kids to adults, in person or virtually. And because I love making worksheets, I've actually created a little guide for you that gives you instructions for all the exercises that we're going to go over that you can actually take with you after the session. So I've just thrown that in the chat. Feel free to click on it, open it up. It's yours to take with you. And as we go through, feel free to prompt any questions or additional thoughts you have, and I'll make sure to hit on them at the end. So let's get started with lesson number 1. So lesson number 1, there is only this moment. When you're making something up on the spot, you can't really prepare for the future because you have no idea what's going to come at you. And the most important foundation to being an improviser is to be fully present, focusing just on the moment that's in front of you and one moment at a time. Now, for some of you, this might actually resonate. This might be familiar. You might recognize that this is something similar to what's known as mindfulness. Now, this is a quote from Jon Kabat-Zinn, who's a preeminent scholar of mindfulness, on what mindfulness is. Now, notice some of the words that are bolded here. What is mindfulness? Well, most importantly, it's awareness. And it's awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. Now, when you read these words, you might have an image in your head like this. The idea of mindfulness has become pretty synonymous with words like meditation, being present, savoring. Now, I don't know about you, but I've definitely savored a number of glorious sunsets, not so much on the sunrises because I like to sleep. I'm definitely more of a night person. And I also find myself savoring the trees outside my window much more now that I'm spending more time at home. So, this is kind of that quintessential mindfulness, really being present, being one with nature. Now, this is also mindfulness. Wait, what? You might be thinking, how is this mindfulness? You heard me right. And in this moment of me making an awkward face, which is seriously every picture of me doing improv, I dare you to find a picture of me doing improv or for something where I'm not making an awkward face. But in that moment, I'm paying attention. I'm paying attention on purpose. I'm aware of my group. I'm aware of the audience. I'm focused in the present moment, and I'm doing it non-judgmentally. I'm not judging myself for that awkward face. I'm not judging my partners for their awkward faces. I'm not judging the audience for the suggestion that they threw out that made me make that awkward face. Instead of focusing on my breath or the sunshine, my attention is actually anchored on other people. It's anchored to my partners, and it's anchored to the audience. And that's the thing about improv. Great improv rarely comes from thinking. It's more commonly developed from being, from observing, and from listening in the moment. Because when you're making something up on the spot with other people, there is no planning. There's only now. The second that you're in your head, you're no longer paying attention. And all of a sudden, the scene has moved past you. So by learning to take each moment as it comes and truly be present, improvisers can become much more aware of their surroundings. They're heightenedly in tune to words, emotions, body language, and even the energy that's coming from the room that can let us create much more intentional choices. And this is something that you can practice too. And I hope that your takeaway from this is that, maybe meditation doesn't work for you. That's fine. There's a million different ways to be present, and there's a lot of different ways to be mindful. And you can be present with another person just as much as you can be present with yourself. So I want to teach you a quick little exercise that you can do to focus on being more in the moment. And this is an exercise called Mirror, which is one of the most common starter improv games. And just as a reminder for those of you who might try to take a screenshot of this or jot down the instructions, that link that I threw in the chat, it's got you covered. That packet has instructions for each of the exercises that we're going to talk through, along with discussion or reflection questions. And it's kind of hard to actually show this a little bit because the only screen you can see myself. So I'll mirror myself. That'll be fun. So what Mirror is actually about is working with a partner. It's mirroring the actions of that other person. It's watching them. It's being present with them. And it's really trying to be their mirror, not thinking, just doing. And it helps you focus your attention outside of your own head by focusing it on that other person. So if you want, I'll give you a second to kind of practice it with me. I can't see you. You can only see me. So don't worry. Again, nobody's judging you. But I'm going to make some motions, and feel free to go ahead and copy those if you just want to kind of practice what mirroring feels like. So I might do something like this, take my hand, open it up, spread out my fingers, close them, open them again. I could even wave them. And as you're playing this game, it's not just mirroring the motions, it's also trying to mirror the speed. You might even notice nuances with my face. My eyes getting bigger, closing, opening, that you can practice too. So this is something that you can do with anyone. And what's neat about this exercise is you can actually take turns being the mirror. One of you can start, and then the other person can jump in. And once you get really good at it, you can even practice mirroring each other without anyone formally taking the lead, just kind of going with the motions. And it might feel a little strange at first, and that's totally okay. Anytime you need a moment to practice being present, though, particularly with another person, this is a really good exercise to follow. And what that does is that helps you be here in this moment and in this space between us rather than here up in your head. So that's our first lesson and our first activity. Let's move on to our next one. Lesson number 2 of improv. We are better together. When people hear I do improv, often the first thing I hear them say in response is, tell me a joke or be funny. Now, despite what they think, improv is not stand-up. Sometimes when I tell people this, I'm like, okay, repeat after me. Improv is not stand-up. If you want to repeat it in the chat, feel free to. It's not about standing on stage with a mic, speaking rehearsed and polished material. No, thank you, Dan. As I shared earlier, improv is completely made up on the spot. Now, while it's similar to other art forms in that it's a creative process, what makes improv unique is that it's not just about creation. It's about co-creation. Improv is rarely solo. It's a team sport. And that's honestly the thing about improv that I love the most. There's nothing like a group of people coming together, aligned to the same goal of entertaining others and supporting each other in the process, committed to being fully present and engaged. And while you might be feeling the importance of connection and creativity right now in your own lives, I think there's something about co-creation that goes deeper than that. Because we're in a time right now when we're trying to come together to battle a common foe. And it's one that's never been seen before. It's one that we don't have answers to. And it requires all of us to come together in unique ways and with unique skills to co-create solutions, to innovate new ways of working, new ways of living, new ways of curing this disease, new ways of healing, doing things that have never been done before. So how can we learn from improv to co-create something great? Because it's not something we're going to do isolated on our own. So the coolest thing about improv and the idea of co-creation in general is when a group comes together in a collaborative, trusting, present, and committed way, often there's magic that happens. Something is created together that is just far greater than anything that would or could have been created by any one person or each person individually. So there's 3 things that we can learn from great improv scenes to co-create something great. It starts with a shared goal. One of the credos of improv is to make others look good. And these can be your partners, the audience. It's about celebrating the group that you're a part of and helping them shine, rather than trying to give the spotlight to yourself. Because ultimately that goal is about providing an entertaining and immersive experience for the audience. Improv requires an audience. If you're not doing it for an audience, you're just kind of doing it for yourself. So that's the big goal. And in part of that, it's important to support each other to make that happen. It's not about being the funniest. In fact, sometimes the strongest scenes come from small background roles individuals take to create a richer picture. And that's the key to successful teamwork that's built on trust. Everyone is aligned to the same goal and is intentionally bringing out the best in the collective group to do so. My guess is you're already seeing moments like this in your community. I was actually literally 2 hours ago standing outside and almost brought to tears because our next door neighbor is hosting a student who just turned 18. She's a senior in high school. She's actually from another country, and she was going to go back home this summer to spend time with her family. And it's been really hard on her that she can't travel. And she couldn't celebrate her 18th birthday in the way that she really wanted to. So what happened? Her teachers, her classmates, her host family, our neighbors came together and celebrated by creating a parade around our block. All of a sudden, 15 cars came in, honking horns. They made signs. They had balloons. We brought our dog out. Our other neighbors 2 doors down brought out their kids with signs and balloons and their dog. And just like seeing that moment, it was something that took all those people to come together to create something with that shared goal of celebrating her birthday, making her happy, that wouldn't have been the same if it had just been one person doing it. So those moments of co-creation are all around us right now. And thanks, Megan and Laura, for sharing that was a beautiful thing, because it really was special to see and to be a part of that. So we've got our goal. How do we bring out the best of the collective group? Well, it starts with recognizing that together we can create something better, and that we need each other to do it. That we're surrounded by people who have unique talents, unique strengths, unique perspectives, unique experiences that can help a scene become stronger and richer, that can innovate in a different way, create in a different way because of that perspective. You see the world and have experiences that I don't have, that by you bringing those and combining them with my own experiences, we can kind of join forces and make like a super Voltron or Power Ranger or whatever the kids are into today. I don't even know. And to really unleash that talent, it requires you to innately recognize and look for the good in other people. what does that person bring that makes them special? What does that person bring that adds value? And that means that you have to be present and paying attention to those around you, focusing on what they do well, aiming to celebrate those things and helping them bring it out at the right time. It also means being aware of your own strengths. And sometimes that can be hard to do. Sometimes there are things that we don't even see in ourselves that other people see in us. For me, it took me a long time to realize that what I bring, particularly as an improviser and into a scene, is energy. I might not have a clever one-liner up my sleeve. I'm not going to be the one who's just going to be able to deliver a punchline, but I can react to whatever you throw my way. I'm not afraid to do something big. I will definitely bring the emotions, and I will react in a way that sets someone else up for that one-liner. Give them the opportunity to have that big laugh where they can shine rather than trying to do it myself. Because ultimately, we're all here to succeed together. We've all got each other's backs, and we're not going to leave each other hanging out to try, or we're not going to try and steal the spotlight from each other. And that kind of leads to the third and most important way to co-create something great. And that's called a yes and approach. So for those of you who are familiar with improv, this is kind of like the core principle of improv. It's something that gets thrown around quite a bit. If you're not familiar with it, basically what this means is that a great improviser adds on to the world or idea that their team creates. It's not about you coming up with this brilliant idea and pushing it on others or forcing them to do it. It's instead adding on to each other's ideas, so that just like the mirror exercise, you don't really know where one person began and the other person ended. You're just kind of doing it together. And when you realize that it's about building rather than tearing down or pushing forward with your idea, you treat everything that your scene partner gives you as a gift. You want to accept that and approach it in a way that heightens that idea, otherwise known as yes and, rather than negating it or shutting it down, which can often happen when we say no, when we say yes, but. I'm sure many of us have been in brainstorming sessions or thrown out an idea where that's happened, and you can just feel the energy get removed from the room. Or if that's happened to you, maybe you didn't even share an idea again in the future because you were afraid of that happening again. So yes and is really the core tenet of improv. And it really starts with being present, because you need to be present to actively listen. I love that, the first pancake, yep. So it's not just about hearing. It's about fully paying attention. It's about reacting, noticing, adding on to what's happening. And whether it's friends, coworkers, family, or your community, your approach should be to be fully present, to listen to what they have to offer, seek to understand it, and look for an opportunity to build off of it, rather than looking for a chance to negatively interject or push it aside so you can move on to your own idea. When you do that, the group that you're interacting with will feel heard regardless of what happens, even if that idea doesn't come to fruition. And you're going to have a heightened awareness to their needs and contributions, which will make it a lot easier for you to tailor your approach to bring out the best in others. And even if it's not an idea that you initially agree with or see the value in, by building or heightening, you can contribute to it, and then you can shape the idea collaboratively, and it winds up evolving something beyond its initial intention. And this is kind of the difference between a I'm right, do what I say, or what I want is most important approach, and we're all in this together, everyone is valued, and how can we help approach. And that's the approach where people feel safe to speak up, get creative, and ask for what they need to be successful. And if you think about kind of where we are and what we need right now, I can't think of a better approach than that to help us create new things that we need to succeed. So how can you put this into practice? This is one of my absolute favorite games, and we can even try it in the chat. We'll see if it works. And it's really easy to play in any environment. You can do it going on a walk around the block. You can do it kicking off a virtual team meeting. You could do it going back and forth over chat or over text. So basically the way this exercise works, which is called word at a time story, is that you are telling a story with at least one other person. And the trick is that this story that's never before been told is going to be told one word at a time while making sense. So basically, you're kind of volleying back and forth, and you can only speak one word at a time. So let's try this. It might be a little bit of fun to do in the chat. So I'll start with a word, and then I just want somebody in the chat to throw a word behind it, and we'll kind of volley that way, where I'll say a word, you'll throw something in the chat. And thank you, Dan Cole, for saying in the menu items, you'll see that there's a to button, and you can select that the chat is set to all panelists and attendees, so you can see everybody who's coming from. So we'll kind of go back and forth. We'll just see how it works. We'll test it out. That's what all this is about, right? All right, so I'm going to kick it off. Once upon. Thank you, Erica. There was twice. Yeah, I had a feeling this was going to happen because we're all at different times. All right, so this is the best story ever. Once upon there was, twice uptime, big tent. There was a big tent. Yep. All right, once upon a time there was a big tent under, nice, love, boom, perfect. It was a haiku. It was a haiku. I like that it ended with boom. You did it. Congratulations. Give yourselves a round of applause. So as you saw from this, sometimes it can go off the rails a little bit. And I can guarantee that the story never goes as planned. And that's okay, because that brings us to lesson number 3. So lesson number 3. Improv, more than anything else in my life, has shown me the difference between what I think I can control and what I can actually control. I can come up with an exciting idea to start a scene, only to see it completely disappear the second I step onto the stage and someone else opens their mouth, taking it in a different direction. Now, I might be delighted by this new direction, or I might be frustrated that my idea didn't come to life. Both of these feelings, everything else in between, is completely natural. And knowing this is an important step to realize that we can actually control how we react. And when that happens, you know, when that idea that I had goes away, I can make a choice about how I want to respond in that moment. So let's talk a little bit more about choice and control. So I want you to imagine that this page, and we'll make it blank for a second. So this blank page is the entire universe shrunk for scale. And that little circle in the middle is what you can actually control. So what can we actually control? What falls into that circle? Well, there's really only one thing that we can control, and that's ourselves. The only thing that you can control is you. The only thing that I can control is me. And more specifically, the only thing that I can control is me in this particular moment. I can control my actions. I can control my reactions. That includes things I say, things I do, things I feel. That's all I can control in this giant page. Now, outside that circle, in a slightly bigger circle, is what you can influence. So what's there? Well, I can influence my future. I can influence other people's actions. I can influence other people's reactions. Now, can I influence everyone? You know, can I influence the governor of Florida to shut down schools for students for the rest of the year? No, I have absolutely no relationship with him whatsoever. I can influence my husband. Thank you, Jill. He might disagree with you. So I can influence him sometimes, right, Dan? But I can't influence him all of the time. I can't influence him on all of the things. So you can influence some of the people some of the time. And what else can I influence? I can influence some of my present state. I can influence some of my future. I can't influence all of it, right? I can't influence the fact that it's now 8:30 p.m. and the sun has gone down. I can't influence whether or not the sun will rise tomorrow. I could maybe influence what time I'll wake up if if I set an alarm, but I can't influence whether or not the power will be on when that alarm goes off because there's lots of big winds that are outside and I live in the woods. So that influence circle is a bit bigger, but you notice it's actually not much bigger. And the rest of the page is everything else. And well, that includes literally everything else. You can't control it. You can't influence it. So what falls in there? Some of those people who I can't influence, or some of those times, the weather, the virus, the past. And what do we focus most of our energy on? We tend to focus most of our energy on the things that fall in everything else. And we try and influence or control the things that fall in everything else. And we get extremely frustrated when we can't. And because it's in the everything else, and thank you, Nyla, yeah, whether or not people can keep this far apart. I wish I can control that too, right? When you see somebody who's not staying far apart, when you see somebody who's not taking precautions. I know, Brian, I want to try really, really hard too. You might be able to influence some of it, right? But you can't control it, and you certainly can't control everyone. And that's where we get most frustrated, is when we're trying to control, when we're trying really, really hard to control other people. And Jerry, I saw you raise your hand. If you want to type in the chat a question, I promise I'll get to it at the end. So I can't control what other people do. It's kind of like pushing against an immovable wall. And, let's take what's happening with, COVID-19, for instance. I can't control where it spreads. I can't control or influence who it impacts. I can control my reaction to it. I can try and influence whether it impacts me or my family. And how can I do that? I can practice physical distancing. I can wash my hands. I can sanitize thoroughly. I can share information about what people can do right. I can model that behavior. I can also focus on keeping myself healthy by moving. I can focus on enjoying nature by looking at the trees or sitting outside where possible. So let's connect it back to improv a little bit. I don't have control or even influence over a lot of things that go on in an improv show, much like life. I can't control the audience. I can't control my partners on stage. So what can I control? I can control whether I'm paying attention. I can control how I respond to the unexpected. And that includes my movements, my words, and ultimately my reactions to my partners. When an idea of mine disappears, I can be upset that it didn't come to life, and I can try to force it in. And in doing so, I'll potentially derail the scene, or worse, erode trust within the group. Or I can pivot. I can refocus myself into the present moment. I can wipe the slate clean from before, because with this new idea, we're in a new reality, and I can't go back to that old one. And I can add on to my partner's idea. And I certainly still stumble in frustration over things I can't control. Believe me, Brian and Nyla, I feel the same way that you do, even though that I think about this a lot. I still kind of fall into those patterns. And I truly believe that thanks to improv, I've been able to learn to channel my inner Elsa from Frozen quite a bit more and everything else. No, I'm not going to sing Into the Unknown, which I know would kind of make sense because the title of this workshop is called Jumping into the Unknown. But I'll sing the other song instead. Think, is this something I can control? Is this something, is it me? When I'm frustrated, is this something within my control? Is it something I can do? If yes, okay, how do I want to show up? If it's no, is it something I can influence? If it's yes, how can I change my actions or reactions to better attempt to influence the situation, other people, myself? And if I can't, let it go, let it go. can't control and influence it anymore. Let it go, let it go. Those aren't really the words, but you get it. So just let it go. So let's cover an exercise to help you practice. Thank you, Laura. Thank you. I'm glad that you appreciate it. My triple threat friend over there. To help you practice how you can change your emotional reactions. So this is a play on an exercise. I'm tweaking it a little bit that I'm calling New Emotion. So in this exercise, the point is for you to play around with different emotional reactions, even unusual ones. And at any point in the conversation, so let's say you're just having a conversation with another person and you're playing this game, you can shout out new emotion and state the particular emotion and replay that last statement with the new emotional reaction that's been called. And as you practice this exercise, you'll feel how different emotions show up in your mind and body, what feels natural and unnatural, and what it feels like to change course. So, all right, let's practice it. So somebody shout out an emotion that you'd like me to convey, and I'll read the instructions on the screen with that emotion. Sad. All right, that's the first one I saw. And then I saw lust. So I'm going to make it lusty sadness because this will be fun. Thank you, Erica and Megan. Play with changing up emotional reactions. Okay, you get it. So that was lusty sadness. So that's something that, you know, you can play. That was lusty sadness. Thank you. I tried. So you can play around with that, right? And it's going to feel weird. But what's cool about this exercise is it allows you to play with emotions that would be the opposite of what you might experience. It'll make you more cognizant of kind of what your defaults go to. And not only can this help you in starting to recognize what emotions show up for you, how they show up in your body, helping you to recognize what those triggers are or how you might be able to change them, because in this game, you're going to switch back and forth between emotions quite a bit. It can also build your own empathy and compassion, because you may realize that others have very different emotional reactions than you to the same stimulus. So for instance, something that scares me to death, like Ferris wheels, yes, I am very, very frightened of Ferris wheels, might be extremely exciting or joyful or playful to you. So this is a great exercise to practice around with that. Let's head to our next lesson, which I think is the most important lesson that we can learn from improv. And that's that failure is a part of the process. So imagine this. I'm on stage towards the end of a show in a line with other improvisers. And we're playing a game based on audience suggestions, which requires us to deliver one-liner puns, which are skills of cleverness. And if you might remember from earlier, cleverness, not my forte. So unlike scene-based games, in this type of exercise, each improviser jumps out when they have an idea. They deliver the pun, and they return to the line with the other improvisers. So we're playing a game like this, and I'm standing there, and creativity strikes, and I think I've got a great idea. I'm excited. I start tapping my toes because I'm getting ready to jump out. And as my other troupmate jumps back into line, I jump forward and I deliver my line to crickets. Nothing. I completely bombed. Now, this has happened more than once. This has happened more than once in a show. And thankfully, the person who jumped in after me in this case had a much better joke so that we could end the show on a high note. But the sting of that failure that I could feel in the silence that felt like an eternity, punctuated by the sad trombone of wow, wow sounds in my head, made it really, really hard to let it go. So, you know, I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and I can still deliver a joke that I think will be funny that doesn't get a laugh. And this happens to everyone. Failure is a constant occurrence in improv. And when you're doing everything completely unscripted for a different audience every time, everything can't be a hit. To succeed in improv, you have to have short-term amnesia and a long-term growth mindset. And I'm going to go into that a little bit in a second here. The key of this is that in the midst of a show, you realize that you as a performer sit and stew with failure much longer than the audience does. And often that failure resonates with you more loudly than it does with them. How you react to that failure influences how others view it. My guess is that audience remembered how that show ended more than they remembered my dud right before it. And my mindset after that dud can go one of two ways. I can approach the situation with a growth mindset. And this is from research from Carol Dweck. She talks a lot about growth and fixed mindsets. Some of you may have even heard of this. This has gained popularity in schools. With a growth mindset, you own the failure and you move on. You look at it as a learning opportunity where you can apply knowledge to improve and create greater success in the future based on what you've learned and based on what you've experienced from that last scene. Or I can have a fixed mindset. I can dwell on the negativity. I could focus on what could have been. Oh, if I only said it this way. Oh, if I hadn't jumped out. I can ignore what my partners and the audience needs. I can stop being present and just stay up here the whole time, thereby completely derailing the scene or even the rest of the show, depending on how long it festers. With a fixed mindset, my actions are based on fear. They're based on judgment. With a growth mindset, my actions are based on curiosity and exploration. And ultimately, by keeping that growth mindset, I know that failure means I tried something and I learned from it. And you know what? What's the worst thing that can happen if I do fail? The scene's going to be over in 2 minutes and we'll be ready to move on to the next one. If that's a strong scene, the audience is going to forget the dud from 5 minutes ago. And this is something I need to remind myself of constantly. And the other thing is, thinking about failure means that I'm in my head. I'm making it about me. I'm no longer making it about the group. And that's the exact opposite of what it should be about. Because then I'm not present, I'm not collaborating, and I'm focusing on things outside of my sphere of control or influence. In this case, I'm living in the past, right? I'm living in that scene from 5 minutes ago rather than the one that I'm in right now. So, how do you enhance that growth mindset? Well, it's about getting comfortable with failure. And the only way that you're going to get comfortable with failure is through practice. So this exercise is a little game about making failure fun. And it's called World Without a Letter. And basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to remove a letter from your vocabulary. You can do this a million different ways. You can have a randomizer. You can throw letters in a hat and pull one up. And try having a conversation for a couple of minutes without it. So, all right, choose a letter I'm no longer allowed to say. Whoever, the first letter that I see in the chat will be the letter F. Okay, so I'm no longer allowed to say F. So when you hear me say F, I want you to put like a giant buzzer in the chat. You can buzz, you can zip, whatever it is. So this letter that you chose for me, there we go, thank you. So in those situations, what I need to do is just reframe, did it again. There we go, change the sentence. I need to change the sentence. So you saw I changed reframe to change the sentence. So this letter that you selected, which I am no longer able to say, has been removed outside of the, outside this particular vocabulary. Phew, okay, I did it. So this is a good way to just kind of practice doing that. I'm allowed to say F again, by the way. So you can kind of learn that when you fail, rather than stewing, you adapt and try again. Even better, celebrate that failure. Give yourself a bow, do a little dance, celebrate it. You failed and nothing bad occurred as a result, and you can try again. And it starts with a letter. You can move on to much bigger things in your life. And when you adapt, it's a cause for celebration, which takes us to our last lesson. So how do I create that long-term growth mindset? by making sure to take the time to celebrate the progress. At the end of an improv show, you traditionally go over notes from the show as a group. You can think of it like show feedback. You might have had feedback sessions yourself in work or in school, and you might be used to those feedback opportunities starting with what went wrong or what you could have done better. The best note sessions, though, start with the highlights. So why are notes so important, and why is it so important to start with the good stuff? It's because if we don't make the space for it, it's going to be hard for us to celebrate the wins. Our brains as a human species are wired to go to what's not working or what went wrong. This is known as our negativity bias. And the good news is that with practice, we can actually rewire our brain so that our automatic default isn't to focus on the bad stuff. Now, at the same time, when we do focus on the good things or the wins, we often focus on the outcomes. We celebrate the results. And the best notes blend celebrating the progress in addition to the outcomes, because that's actually how we grow. We grow from effort, and we don't celebrate that often enough. And it's celebrating those efforts and that progress that can actually continue to motivate us. It's what encourages us to try to continue to do new things, to take risks, to learn, to get better. So how can you celebrate progress? Well, you can look for opportunities to appreciate things that you tried, even if they scared you. You know, did you play a new game for the first time in that improv show? Or did you make a really bold choice on a character that you've never done before and weren't sure how it was going to land? Maybe it even wasn't that successful, but it was something you tried. What were the peak moments where you felt energized, really present, or like you learned something? Was it a particular line, a reaction, a character movement? And it's not just about doing it for yourself. You can also celebrate the efforts of others. Did a partner jump in when you were struggling? Did someone set you up for an opportunity for you to use your strengths? Those are really, really great opportunities to celebrate the wins. And in fact, making a regular practice of identifying and documenting the good stuff, whether it's 3 small wins, 3 good things a day, 3 things you're grateful for, it's one of the strongest exercises correlated with boosting positive emotions, well-being, and even your health. And it's also the trick to helping to foster that growth mindset in yourself and others. So let's put that into practice. This is kind of my favorite little exercise, and it's called Small Win, Big Win. And basically, what we do in this exercise is we take something small that you've accomplished in the past 24 hours, like brushing your teeth. So on a scale of 1 to 10, it would be a 1. And we hype it up to a level 10. So Jess, because you just wrote that really sweet comment that the session is in your top 3 for the day, what's something small that you accomplished in the past 24 hours? Because I'm going to hype it up for you. You put on your jeans. All right. So Megan did too. All right. All right. So Jess put on her jeans and they fit. That's a 1. Let's make it a 10. Oh my God. I hope that everybody is listening right now. I want you all to gather around, get in real close, because I have something to tell you that you are not going to believe. You are not going to believe it. Jess Strongsmith, ladies and gentlemen, from Charlottesville, Virginia. Do you know what she did today? You know what she did? Yesterday she didn't wear pants. I'm not even sure if she wore underwear, but today she put on jeans. Not just on one leg. Nope, she put them on both. She put them on both. She wore them all day, and you're not going to believe this part. They fit. They fit. You're my hero, Jess. Congratulations to you. How'd that feel, Jess? Thank you, Renee. I'm happy to hype anybody who needs it anytime. So yeah, this is something super fun. You know, you can hype yourself, you can hype others. Think about how it feels to have that like 1 go to a 10. And I promise that it will make your day better. And I promise that it will, well, Megan, I actually did videotape you telling, Megan said that this could be footage of her telling her best friends that she put on pants today. And yeah, I secretly spy at you at home, so I might have copied that from you. Sorry about that. Yeah. So yeah, hype up your friend. You know, Megan, next time you're talking to your friends and they're telling you they put on their pants, go ahead and hype it up. All right. You know, that's what we need is kind of moments of celebrating each other right now and celebrating each other for the small things because it's what matters. So let's recap. Now that we've gone through our 5 lessons, you might feel like there's an obvious one that's missing. And that's being adaptable, going with the flow, being agile, whatever it is you want to call it. And there's a reason for that. Be adaptable is very easy to say. It's hard to do in traditional uncertainty or change. It's even harder to do when we're flooded with fear, when we're dealing with anxiety or other challenges in what's truly a scary and unprecedented time like we're in right now. And while being adaptable isn't on the list, these 5 lessons were intentionally chosen because each of them, individually and all of them together, are keys to helping you become more adaptable in uncertainty. And while not every one of them may stick with you, my hope is that at least one sparked something for you. If you feel nervous about trying out an exercise, guess what? That's a great reason to do it. And I will indeed put it here again. I think that was the link. Yep, there we go. There you go, Zoe. It's a chance to choose your reaction. You know, going into an exercise in a playful way, I can choose my reaction. It's a chance for you to focus on being present. It's a chance for you to co-create something new and unique with others in a playful environment. And it's a chance for you to celebrate the progress that you make. And if you fail or forget, guess what? That's just part of the process. And tomorrow is a new day to try again. So, in addition to the exercises that I provided, I've also included at the very, very end of that some additional resources you could check out if you do want to dig deeper into learning more about improv, including my own capstone from the MAPP program, an article that I posted on Creativity Post about improv and leadership a couple years ago, and then some great resources from the Second City Works podcast, Improv Encyclopedia, and a few books as well. So question from Jill. Thanks, Jill. How much improv did I do before I started feeling as if it altered how I operated in the rest of my life? That's a really great question. And I don't know that I can say, honestly, off the top of my head. And I think part of that is because I started getting involved in improv when I was in high school. I wasn't actually performing, but I was going to shows pretty regularly. And I was often shouting out suggestions and yelling things from the audience, volunteering when they wanted an audience volunteer. So I feel like it's been a part of me as I was kind of shaping into my own maturity and moving from adolescence to adulthood. I mean, it's been a huge part of my life since I've been 19 years old. So, I mean, it's shaped me because I've grown through and with it, if that makes sense. But yeah, I'd be curious if for anybody else who has done improv on this chat and maybe started it later in life, or if you feel like you have that moment where you could say, gosh, this is when improv did it for me, feel free to pipe up. I'd be interested to hear what your perspectives are. You know, it's interesting too, kind of reflecting back now as an adult, I realize, and my sister's on this call, so she could probably add her own thoughts as well, that when I was a kid, I was doing improv all the time without even knowing it. I was constantly making up songs, I was making up voices, I was making up characters. So, you know, I think just improv's always been a part of who I am. And I think when I really started to notice all the time, thanks, Courtney. That's my sister, everyone. And I think when I really, really started to notice how much it's shaped me is kind of along the times when I started getting interested in leadership development as a profession. And all right, next question. So, hello, Dan. I'm very outcome focused and often lose sight of celebrating progress, especially when I'm unsure whether the progress is truly leading to the outcomes I'm after. How can I get better at celebrating progress, especially of others? And Jill's got the same question. Awesome. So I think, Dan, outcome focus is one of your strengths. So why not use that strength as a means to celebrate the progress? If something that you're trying to get better at is celebrating progress, especially of other people, maybe what you can do is set a goal for yourself and saying, you know what, I'm going to find 3 opportunities in the next day to notice 3 things that 3 different people have tried and celebrate them. And I'm going to jot them down. And at the end of the day, if I've done it, I can cross it off my list and I can say mission accomplished. And that's a way to start retraining your brain to kind of focus on celebrating the progress in a way that aligns with who you are. I think one of the things that you can do too is if there's particular people like your wife who's leading this conversation that you want to celebrate the progress of more often, have a conversation with them. Ask them what are things that they would like to be celebrated for. What are things that they might take for granted? How can you celebrate that progress for them? And jotting down reminders. I'm a big fan of Post-it notes, putting a Post-it note to remind yourself, having it front of mind, or a screensaver on your background to have it front of mind. Even creating, a ritual, maybe at dinner, it's celebrate progress is how we start off before we eat. Some people say grace, maybe we have celebrate the progress. Same thing with team meetings. You can do that as well. Cool. Jess asked, how are groups doing improv currently when we can't be physically together? Any innovations in the physical process? Yeah, I have seen a lot of really, really cool stuff. There's been a ton of Zoom improv happening right now, which has been really fascinating. I've actually seen it with comedy sports quite a bit, where different cities have been performing against each other, where they've literally been doing it from their living room. Like, you're going to have 4 video cameras and I'm here and other person's there and we're doing a scene together. It's definitely not easy. It requires, I think, a lot more intentionality and a lot more focus because you can't pick up on stuff as much. You don't have the full view. But it's been really cool to see people trying that out. I've seen workshops being led that way, classes being led that way as well. And what I'm actually really intrigued to see is how much this continues after we're done physically isolating as much, because it's something that I've always wondered about, whether or not you can do improv workshops or improv team buildings as effectively virtually, and it's a great breeding ground for that right now. All right, next question. Cool. Okay, hi Zoe. I've been an actor and improviser for many years, and you're also a coach focusing on wellness for executives. You're in the middle of doing your MAPP. Yay! And I dream of doing this type of team building work with improv for businesses in the future. How did you get into L&D? Can you give your career story? Oh boy. Yeah, I actually have a pretty long and windy journey. I spent more of my career, so backtrack, like improv's always been a thing that I did on the side, kind of for fun, social, or like performing and teaching after my day job. So it wasn't the thing that I was doing predominantly. And I spent a large part of my career doing a lot of different stuff. I worked in higher ed for a long amount of time. I was an academic advisor. I worked in a technology company where I partnered with universities to help them recruit, enroll, and retain students. And I actually was managing a team of account managers, and I was at a management retreat, and we took StrengthsFinder. And I was getting pretty burnt out on my role, and I didn't know why. And I kind of took a step back, and I looked at my strengths, and I thought about my kind of weird, windy career path, and asked kind of what it all had in common, reflected on when I was most energized in my career, where I felt most fulfilled, and I realized that it was bringing out the potential in other people. And I realized that that's something that's transcended my entire career, no matter what I was doing. It's things that I could even push back to high school when I was captain of my softball team, or when I would do presentations for parents about why their kids should sign up for Latin. And it was something that was just kind of always true to who I was. And I realized as a leader, as a manager of a team, I was able to bring out the potential in my team, but I wanted to do it in a much broader scale. And honestly, this is the same time that I actually found MAPP, where MAPP found me. It's kind of one of those weird situations where I didn't even know I was searching for it, and boom, there it was. And a lot of stuff kind of aligned, in that I was able to craft a role within my organization at the time to move from the account management role I was in to building out leadership development and learning and development, which they hadn't had before. But the only reason I was able to do that was because I had been there for a number of years. I had been quite successful as a leader, had kind of made a name for myself as a leader, and was really open to the risk, which I guess is something that Improv's taught me, and made the case for why I felt like this would be an important role to have in the organization. And that was about 6 years ago. And I've been in several different organizations since then. And I'd be more than happy, Zoe, if you want to chat more about just kind of my career journey in general, tips and advice I have, watch outs, things to think about, and kind of get a sense of what you're interested in. I'd be happy to do that. I think there's pluses and minuses of any role. For me, I like being able to make a broad impact and kind of spark something new in people, and watch them kind of nurture and grow that on their own. It's not for everybody. Some people like to be deeper. For those who are coaches like yourself, you might actually miss out on having those deep relationships. But yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to set up a time to chat. Oh, yay! Yay, Jesse, you did celebrate the progress exercise in your last work from home team meeting. Yes! I'm glad that was what you needed. Fantastic. Keep it up. The last thing I want to leave you with is, at the end of the day, we're all in this together. Be kind to yourself, be patient with each other, be open to new experiences, and support each other to not only survive, but to create something to help us thrive on the output of this. I really, really hope these tips and tools are going to help you take one small step to get there. And thank you so much for coming. I'd love to hear how you're using the exercises if you do try them out. I've included my LinkedIn profile on the document, so please feel free to connect with me, and wishing you the best in what's to come.